All right, welcome everyone to the ITB2 community meeting, the December edition. Um, thanks for us moving this thing around. We were trying to avoid AMIA and avoid other things, so great to have you all here. I'm going to get this kicked off, and if I can advance to the next slide, here we go. So here's the agenda for today. I have just a couple of minutes, quick updates from general foundation updates. We've asked Anupama to do an overview of the changes and enhancements that are in Shrine 4.4. There's been a lot of stuff packed in that, and I'm not sure people are really aware of all the changes. That will be rolled out very soon to the Enact network and available to anybody else that wants to take it. Mitch is going to do a demo, like a preview of our new ITB2 website. It's not live yet, but it's pretty exciting. And we definitely want your feedback on this, either during the meeting or afterwards. We want to make sure this is a resource that works for everyone. And then Jeff is going to do a deeper dive into 1.8.2 that was just released, and also a demo of some of the features. So announcements, save the date. So our June ITB2 symposium is going to be June 9th and 10th next year. Our theme will be putting our values into AI. Zach Kohani will be our keynote speaker. So please, we'd love to have you in Boston in June, and we'd love to get that in the book. So what I want to do is I feel like I'm a little bit behind on this. I want to start putting an agenda together that is something that really makes sense for the community. So again, Zach will be our keynote. He that's what he does, is he works around AI, and so he does a great job and has a lot of insight into this. But we also want to put the agenda together to make it not just about AI. We want to focus on I2B2 and use cases. I would love to get volunteers from the community to come and present. If you can't come to Boston, we could have you present on Zoom. I really want to make this more of a symposium that really talks about how the different ways I2B2 is being used across the community. We'll obviously have talks about our working groups or trainings. Any ideas, please either put them in the chat or send me an email. If we have time at the end, certainly can bring that up. But please start. I want more participation from the community. All right, so board of directors, this is our esteemed board. This group meets about 3 times a year. It gives us a lot of direction and support. We have 2 open board seats that we're starting to think about filling. So if you know of anybody, we want to bring in people that can help support the foundation, either in-kind support and helping us with our marketing or development. If we can bring in a corporate sponsor that starts at 20,000, or smaller AMCs 5,000, but definitely we'd love to fill those 2 open seats. So if you know of anybody, please let us know. And of course, I got to put a plug in for our working groups. The ontology working group, Michelle Morris leads that up. Committee on Technology, Griffin Weber leads that up. He also leads the UI working group. And then we have a new Docker working group. Kavi leads that, and that's moving along really nicely. So information about this is on our website, and the timing of the meetings. You can join one of these working groups, join as a regular member and come every month, or you can just drop in and hear what we're talking about. The Zoom information's um, on the foundation page. So I am going to stop, and I am going to turn this to Anupama.
Thanks, Diane. All right. Hi, everyone. So thank you, Diane, for giving me the chance to walk through the work that the Shrine team has been wrapping up on 4.4. And so I'll just get right into it. So I just wanted to take a second just to talk about the difference between I2B2 and Shrine. I know these two tools get talked about a lot, and just for any new folks on the call, just wanted to really point out they are two separate and distinct tools. So the scope for I2B2 is really focusing on your local clinical data warehouse. The point of it is to mostly for local cohort exploration, institutional data analysis, and preparation for clinical studies. And whereas Shrine, the Shrine is a federated network. So what it does is it connects all those I2B2 installations at the local site. So instead of just getting a count or getting data back at one site, I2B2 will help researchers run cross-institutional queries, and it provides aggregate anonymized counts, and they're obfuscated so that there's no patient-level data that's leaving the institution. Um, and of course, it's to support multi-site feasibility queries, getting sample sizes across different hospitals that are part of the network, and just really supporting collaborative research networks. The architecture is also a little different. I2B2 is a local deployment. It uses cells, such as different cells to support the ontology, and the CRC to store and query those clinical data. And again, just to drive the point home, I2B2 is just so your local institution's patient population. And versus Shrine, it sits on top of I2B2, so I2B2 is a prerequisite to have Shrine working. There is a central hub that sort of helps distribute the queries to all the participating sites. And then, like I said, the data never leaves the site. So what is returned back is just a count of the number of patients that match the query. So I just want to take a second to just make sure we differentiate between those two tools. So the last release we did for Shrine was 3.3.2. This is the version that the Enact network is currently on. So the main features that were released in 3.3.2 was being able to do more advanced breakdowns. We wanted to customize the logo and the application names. And then we wanted to provide support for those advanced custom breakdowns because there's a lot more data that's coming back. Since then, we've had been teams been hard at work, and the new 4.4 release you can see has about over a dozen new features. So instead of going through all of them, I kind of categorize into four main groups. So we have about six features related to improving querying and research productivity. We have two for access and security enhancements. We improved the network interoperability and simplified some of the technical um, architecture for the platform. So for the querying and research productivity features, we've heard some of the feedback from this group and from the UI working group that there really need to be support for additional temporal queries capabilities. And so we've actually added a third panel. I have some visualizations for the one which have an asterisk so you can sort of see what this is like. So that was really good feedback that we got and we were able to be responsive to it. We also now have a way to sort of organize some of your queries a little better. So there's a way to like mark them as your favorite, add some notes so you can come back to it. We made it a lot easier to copy and paste the query definition, so it enables some sharing of the definition itself. We also added additional logic, point four, to allow the query to be built out, making sure panels can have a relationship where they're in the same encounter or the same instance. Again, a lot of this is trying to mirror the capability that currently exists in I2B2. We also, because this is a large network, we wanted to find a way to help researchers filter and sort some of the results that come back from the sites. And then we did also enhance obfuscation, so prior to the in 3.3.2, the obfuscation was always set to 10. And now what we've done is make that value something that the sites can configure. And the recommendation moving forward for the Enact network is to set that to 3. And I also have a screenshot of that to show what that's like. So next we have security and access enhancements. So we've integrated the login with single sign-on, authentication, and authorization. We've also integrated it with if you have a profiles set up at your network, you'd be able to have a seamless, secure experience to log in. And secondly, we now have a way to sort of capture a researcher's compliance to the data agreement. So we have a way to be able to make sure they acknowledge or aware and using it to the using the tool based off of community guidelines. So network interoperability. So, we did a big jump from 3.3.2 to 4.4.0. And so what we really wanted to make sure was that the two modes would be compatible with one another. So we will be able to connect and support a network that is mixed mode, meaning that it can have various versions of a 3.x and various versions of a 4.x, and we should be able to get data back from those sites. Okay, and lastly, from simplifying the architecture, so we actually removed some deprecated components. So we did get rid of the DSA. So the DSA was a data store application. So we did remove it. With that, we also got rid of the topics. So when I show you the screenshots, you no longer have to specify a topic when you run a query. And along with that, we removed the AIM3 plugin support. And instead, I know the DSA provides some type of metrics, so we did build out a way for sites to run periodic metrics at their site, so they should be able to get the numbers out that the DSA was originally providing. And then we did include the optional tooltips with the leucine index. So when you're searching the ontology, you can add better tooltips to be able to add additional information to the terms. So like I said, it was a pretty big feature, a pretty big release with a lot of features. And now so I'll go through some screenshots that I have. So here for advancing temporal queries, you might recall from before we have the panel up here set up that it's set to a timeline-based query when you select the when clause. And before we were always limited to 2 events. So it was always event 1 before event 2. And now we've added this button here that you simply click and it expands to expose a 3rd event. And then you'd have the option here, similarly to the space here, to specify the relationship between event 2 and event 3. So again, we've been able to the events will still follow a sequential order, so it's always event 1 before event 2 before event 3. But now you'll have more flexibility to be able to define that 3rd event as part of the temporal queries. Next, the other querying logic that we added was the ability to link these panels to occur in the same instance or the same encounter group. So again, this is just another way to specify the details of how you want to construct your query. So simply there's this little icon here on the right-hand side of each panel. When you click on it, you get an option whether to group these boxes by encounter or by instance. And once you specify that, the color and the icon will change so that you know that these, for example, panel 2 and panel 3 are linked by the same encounter. And it's pretty easy to remove it. You just click on it again and you unlink that particular panel. Here we have what I'm showing is the site level filtering. So on this specific setup, I do have 6 distinct nodes, but you'll notice that one of the nodes, node 3, has an error. So by default, it's hidden from view, and then I can toggle it to show that node in its order. So this is really helpful, especially in large networks when you're trying to get counts back. It really just focuses on the sites that returned a result. All right, so this is one of the last few things I wanted to show. So this is the enhanced data privacy through obfuscation. So this is actually demonstrating 2 things. One, which is that this network that I have set up is actually a mixed mode network. So there are sites that are running an older version of Shrine, such as the 3.x line, and then the newer ones running the 4.x line. And you'll know because the older ones have the old obfuscation configuration. But you'll see here that now we do support obfuscation, customizing the obfuscation number that gets returned. And then if you click on one of these icons, it pops up a modal window here, and you can view all of those obfuscation parameters for that particular site. So it might be helpful for researchers to understand the counts and the numbers um, that they are getting back. So that was all I wanted to show for today. And if you have any questions, happy to answer them now or at the end of the meeting, depending on time.
Hi, Anupama. I have a question.
Hey, Michelle.
Um, the node only feature, can
Uh-huh.
you elaborate on that a bit?
Sure. So this is um, a way for sites if they don't want to necessarily if it's more about a site that's willing to contribute their data, but they don't necessarily need to run queries. So it's a lightweight way to participate in the network without setting up the UI component or the QEP component. So it only provides data.
Okay. But so the people from those sites won't be able to run queries?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Anupama? All right, let's switch over to Mitch. He's gonna demo the new I2B2 website.
Okay, unmuted, share. Okay, do you see something?
Yes, you see your screen.
Perfect, perfect. So I'm just gonna give a quick demo. I've done a couple of these presentations and we're slowly building, but hopefully we're almost at the finish line for a newly designed I2B2 website. So what you're seeing right now is the front page, kind of the landing page of what I2B2 website will look like in the future. And this is just really meant to capture people's imaginations, right? Just quickly show, of course, I2B2 is much larger um, implementation wise, but right up front, it's just like this is the query tool, this is the end product that investigators would use. Just right away, kind of like turning clinical data into research-driven discoveries. There's a couple call to action buttons. One was suggested to just say, talk to us about I2B2. So this is really just contacting, Diane and Dave Diamond within the I2B2 Foundation to field any of these, initial questions that sites may have, and of course, questions can be about several things, right? Typically, for new institutions that have not used I2P2 before, this is a great opportunity to just have a conversation about it. And then, of course, when you scroll down, it starts to reveal a little bit more information. And so this is just kind of random features that are could be important to various new users of I2B2 or even people looking to understand what I2B2 um, is capable of. So we really just talk about here about seamless data integration. It I2B2 connects with of course everyone on this call knows already, but diverse clinical data sources and so forth, OMOP and REDCap and the ETL process from Epic and so forth. And so this is just to capture some of those features up front. Then when you scroll down, you get this kind of just an example of how a site might implement I2B2 and how a workflow might look like when you use I2B2, right? So as we all know, so from data to discovery, step one, it's like finding a patient cohort, searching across, the various navigate terms and ontology, designing the queries, and then there'll be further pages that describes, a lot more of this process. A lot of the content is already on the community wiki right now, but we're just kind of bringing it forward to expose some of the great content that is on the wiki that's kind of currently hidden. Step two, after finding a patient cohort, I2B2 now has the capability to export aggregated or full data sets. So as of and Jeff's going to talk about this more, for 1.8.2. But since 1.8.1, there's the ability to export various data sets out of I2B2. So it's kind of taking that next step forward beyond the aggregate data count. Step three is, what do we do with these aggregate data files, right? These wide files or tall files that we're producing. And so we can do some, the data science and analytics that happens integrating with R and Python and so forth, right? And then finally, it's kind of just wrapping this all together. And again, this is just an example workflow. Of course, you can use I2B2 in many different ways. And then this is kind of wrapping it together, being able to develop, various computed phenotypes from your analyses, uh, and so forth to further refine, um, your query tool and querying capability. These are just the typical kind of modern website things that you would see, right? Why researchers trust I2B2. These are just polling statistics. If anyone has better statistics, feel free to just let me know, really. But this is just the typical stuff you've seen, 250 plus hospitals across the world are using I2B2. We have very large I2B2s out there. So there's I2B2s that support over 25 million patients in one I2B2 instance, with over 5 billion clinical facts in the fact table, peer review publications, and so forth. Here it's just pulling out some of the quotes. I think one of these is Jeff Klann's quotes, something here. Anyway, it talks about how great I2B2 is from a research point of view. And then finally and this again, this is just the homepage, just scrolling down, and I'll kind of continue on with the other pages in a second. But this is just again putting front and center some frequently asked questions. I don't know who's asking these questions, but I'm sure somebody are asking these questions. But like, what is I2B2? Who uses it? What can it integrate with? How does it protect patient privacy? So this is just stuff that I think every single person on the call really knows already, but this is just from, anyone who's visiting the I2B2 website for the first time. This is just capturing some of the, interesting questions that would give a better overview of what I2B2 is. So when we go on the top bar right now, and this is going to expand as it builds out, but there's there's features, documentation, downloads, community, foundation. So a lot of the I2B2 foundation pages are going to be wrapped into this. There's live demo, and I'll show you what that is, and then ability to get I2B2, of course. Oh, the Zoom, get out here. How do I get out? Hold on a second. Oh, okay. The zoom bar went over the menu. Sorry about that. Okay, so clicking on like I2B2 features. So I'm going to be revamping this table at the end. I just didn't want to remove it right away. But this again, this is just taking one step down about, I2B2 features that putting it front and center. So for example, like here are three visual things that we've all seen day to day, but robust ontologies. So being able to have custom powerful ontologies, especially the ones developed by Michelle Morris on this call, of course, able to be hosted in I2B2. We take this for granted, but this is like the drag and drop interface of the new modern web client for I2B2, and allowing the Boolean logic to be able to construct very complicated queries, custom breakdowns. Mike Mendes has worked a lot on this in various ways to stratify the data that comes back. Okay, Michael has his hand up. Should I take questions now? Yeah, go for it.
Hey, Nick, can you go back to the metric page there where you show how many institutions are using
Oh,
I2B,
sure.
how many patients?
Yeah, of course.
Just a suggestion here. Because when I first look at that number, when you show it, and it shows that 25 million plus patients supported, I would take that as being out of the 250 installation, there are 25 million total patients supported.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense.
I kind
Yeah.
of think the same way.
Got it. Yeah.
So maybe it can be worded differently.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, it was just throwing in numbers over there as placeholders, but totally makes sense that it a little bit confusing, and also I was also thinking like I didn't want to put this as having a ceiling as like it only supports 25 million patients.
Yeah.
So
and same as effects support. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, perfect. And then so geez, come back to the thing in a second. Download. Okay, moving this bar. Okay, go to downloads here. This is just the typical I2B2 software page, but this is put into just a way to highlight that these are like four distinct ways that we're delivering I2B2 right now, right? There's the quick install, the binaries that for 1.8.2 that are available, the ability to download the source code, of course, VMware, and then Docker is another way that you can do this. There'll be links to GitHub to retrieve any of the source code, of course. But this is just kind of front and center, more of a techie way. I want to switch over to live demo really quick. We're preparing this, but it's not exactly, but I just want to show the vision here. So I think we all think it's important to be able to show, allow people, which we're doing right now, allow people to be able to log into the query tool in a demo way, right? To play around with the query tool. But I think we also discussed that it's important to show the various use cases and roles because of course, like, an obfuscated user, like a typical investigator, it's going to be very different from like somebody with a manager. They might be the PI, as very different from someone who's like has the admin role. So we wanted to kind of pull out or feature various roles with various user IDs so that you can log into the demo instance of I2B2 to play around in different ways. So of course, like the obfuscated role, you can see that it would highlight when you run queries, you get the obfuscation ±3. You don't see the exact patient counts and so forth. The non-obfuscated role, you see more, a little bit more, just revealing a little bit more about like seeing the aggregated patient counts, but also the data tables that can be generated now in 1.8.2. The manager role, so this is another view that you wouldn't typically see, but we want to highlight is that like, a principal investigator, for example, can go in, they can see the queries that were performed by other users of, by other team members, for example. And then they can also, there's a new data request manager plugin that um, corresponds with the exporting of the data, right? So here is where a manager can actually see all the data requests that have come in. They can uh, create the data files and take the next step to see, the statuses and so forth. And so this is somebody who can also service those data requests. And then of course the administrator role is just kind of the super user, but of course, maybe there's one person who has all the roles in ITV2, but this is just highlighting that there's up and coming a lot of work in 1.8.3 to beef up the admin functionality of I2B2. So this whole admin dashboard and so forth is being worked on and actively in 1.8.3. But using this admin only account, you would be able to get into this, admin plugin, be able to configure and view, projects and so forth, creating new projects and managing users. So just really highlighting a role-based access in I2B2, which already exists today. We all know that, but to a new user, it's really hard to define or to distinguish that, this very secure role-based access exists in I2B2 today. And then finally, I think the only thing left is this documentation piece, which we're still working on populating. But the only thing to say about this is that the great work of everyone on I2B2 team, Jeff, Rita, Mike, and so forth, of all the content that is currently on the community website, right? So that includes the installation guide, the release notes, and all the content in the Confluence website right now. We will be organizing it and porting the content into this system called BetterHelp. And then essentially it's just a different way to organize the data, but it's going to release us from the Confluence, package, Atlassian package, and also allow us to manage the documentation a little bit better. In addition, there's other things that I can't really show right now, but there's like live help AI chatbot thing that connected to BetterHelp, so you can actually ask questions of this thing, and then it's gonna comb through the documentation and then try to help new users for that. So this is just a preview of what's coming. And I think, or maybe I'll conclude with, I think we all know why we're doing this initiative. It's trying to organize, kind of the outdated, kind of old methodologies of design before into more of a modern, user-friendly website. Of course, this is responsive design, so it supports mobile on your cell phone, on the iPad, and so forth. And then this is really much more manageable because it's in a content management system that anyone can, or without technical knowledge, can edit any of these things easily. So it's gonna allow us to better maintain kind of one website for I2B2. Okay, I'll stop right there.
Thanks, that was really great. Definitely more to come on this. And let's switch over to Jeff to make sure we have enough time to cover his areas. I'm pretty excited about the new website, by the way, especially the documentation.
Thanks, Diane.
Yeah, don't worry about my stuff. Niches was that was exciting. Enjoyed that. Am I sharing? I mean, do you want me to share?
You should share, yeah.
Okay, I will do it. Desktop 2. So for those of you that have been attending community calls or the June meeting, and you may know a lot of this already. But now that I2B2 1.8.2 is actually released and you can go to the website and download it, thought we'd do a little reiteration of some of the interesting and cool new features that we've added in 1.8.2. This is the acknowledgement slide with many of the dozens of people who have worked on I2B2 over the years. Really briefly, I think it's useful to show the things that we've innovated in I2B2 over the last few years. We've replaced the old Commodore 64 looking 1990s interface with a brand new user interface with movable panels and a lot of UI updates. As Nish had mentioned, we have a admin tool that is getting even more enhanced in 1.8.3, and it replaces the very old defunct admin tool from the old web client and allows you to do user management, project user association management too. And we also support the OMOP data model as the backend data model for sites that want to run I2B2 on their OMOP instance. And we've added digital twin features too, which allow you to do advanced things like find cohorts of patients with complete data for your research study, or find patients that seem to really have a condition, not just a single diagnosis code for a condition, which doesn't predict that the patient actually has the condition with very good accuracy in a lot of cases. So the phenotyping gets you closer. So those are all things that have been available for a little bit longer, but I2B2 1.8.2 hot off the presses on September 30th. Major important thing we did was update to the latest version of our framework software, Java, Wildfly, and Axis, which provides better security and does require a software upgrade, but it's well worth it. Feature-wise, we implemented the faster patient counting scripts in all three database platforms, so Oracle and Post take advantage of that and not have to wait 8 hours to get their patient counts. We have a lot of bug fixes, performance improvements, the new ACT ontology, which I have a slide on in a second, and the main feature, of course, is the new data export workflow with a table designer and a data export manager, and I'll go into some detail on that. The ACT v4.2 ontology was mostly a refresh of some of these tables, diagnoses, procedures, medications, etc., to UMLS 2024 AB, get all the newest terms in there. Data export has been a focus of our work in I2B2 for a few years now. In 1.8.1, we introduced a data export feature that allows you to allow users to request chunks of data in I2B2 format, basically. You can get a medication file, a demographic file, a procedure file, etc., that looks a lot like the I2B2 fact table. And that involved a user could click a special breakdown when they run a query, which would send an email to a manager who could rerun the query and run their own special breakdown to create a data exports file or set of files and send those over to the user. It was a little bit cumbersome, but it definitely demonstrated the functionality of how one could do data export. In 1.8.2, we've introduced a whole new way of doing it for those that want to, and enhanced the old way of doing it too. You can design these custom data tables so you can get exactly the spreadsheet out that you want for your research study. If you're studying like diabetes and hypertension, you don't have to get all of the facts about the Tylenol that they've been taking. You can select the very specific facts you're interested in. We also, again, the user runs the query, selects a special breakdown that associates it with a table data export request, and that now the manager has this fancy plugin, the data request manager plugin, that allows them to review the data requests and generate the files. So no more rerunning the query and answering emails and all that. So I'm going to briefly show some slides of these tools, and then if there's time left, I'll show a little bit of it in a live way. But the slides show it pretty well. So here's an example of a data table. Someone maybe studying daytime sleepiness and sleep apnea. So you can see specific diagnosis codes. You can choose your aggregation method. So each one of these diagnosis codes, you get a spreadsheet, right? So sleep apnea would be a column in your spreadsheet, and each patient would be a cell, and you can choose what you want in that cell. Here, I've chosen the first date that a person had that diagnosis. For CPAP, I've chosen existence. So it's a yes or a no. Did they ever have that in their medical record? Or for the third one, it's a count of facts. So how many times did this repeat in their record? And there are a lot of these. So yeah, I keep clicking on the other window. So you can see there's number of concepts, number of dates, encounters, facts, providers, first date, last date. And there are actually even more for query by value terms, where you can get the mean and the median and all kinds of other things that can be calculated on the value. You can preview what your table looks like. You can save your table. There are shared tables you can share across a project. And then you go back to run query, you put together a query, and you click, I want a data export for my apnea table. And then the manager in their data request manager plugin will see that request was submitted, and they can choose to generate the file. There's a create file button there if they're interested. And the file, as I was describing, looks something like this. So you see, oh, interesting, this is a different file. I've forgotten I used that. But you can see that like mild intermittent asthma has like the first date of diagnosis. Fluticasone has, I think, number of occurrences. And then there's some, like the IG inflammatory markers is just a yes or a no. So that is that is the slideshow version of this. I'll go through these slides very quickly, so I don't have to go back to them, and then I'll show some of it live. The wiki right now is still community.itb2.org. We have the Google group for all your questions about ITB2. Download the actual software at itb2.org/software. That's probably the most important URL. And then there's GitHub. We are moving, or we have ported the issues from Jira. Again, we're moving away from Atlassian. So we've moved the Jira issues over to GitHub issues, and we're trying to start using that now. So submit or respond to an issue there, and definitely feel free, and we encourage you to contribute your own hard work too that you've done at your institution to the ITB2 open source project. All right, so let's see. I can hopefully, we are sharing, right? Yeah. You can all see my screen. We've been having a little bit of trouble with the community enclave the last couple of days, but I can show some things. So this is the ITB2 query tool, of course. Now under, oh, I'm sorry, I need to log in as a manager. Okay. So if you have sufficient permission, you can go to create data table for export. And here you get the data table creator, and we can, I'm going to do a search category diagnoses. We can put in something like asthma. And notice all 133 patients have asthma, so existence is not very interesting in this data set. But we could say, what was the first date they had asthma? And we can drag other things over, like laboratory tests. We could drag something maybe not particularly relevant to this study, but just to demonstrate. I think we have respiratory rate. We have 0 patients with that. Well, I am going to cheat and go to a table that I have previously defined that has some asthma-related things. We have a liver function test, asthma diagnosis, first date, albuterol inhaler, and bronchodilators. And as you'll notice, I chose count number of concepts. We could also choose, for example, count number of dates. Albuterol, we chose the last date. Notice for this one, because it's a query by value, I get different options. I get all these calc options. I can choose maximum, minimum, average, median value, things like that. Then I could save my minor change there if I'm interested, but let's just go with this. Let's say I want data on all of the patients in the database, all the males and females. When I click Run Query now, I get a data request option down here. Again, if you have sufficient permission as the user, you can choose to request a data table. Now it needs an email. And this part is where we're having trouble with the enclave. Queries are not actually running, but usually in about the same amount of time it would take to get a patient count, you would get a note that says this was a successful request. Then a manager can come in this is always the problem with live demos. I think, okay, there we go. And we can, for example, just for fun, we can reset this query to something I can run a create file on. So we can look at this query. This was all females using asthma table 1C. I can click on view details. I can look at the request and the different statuses it's had, and then comments, which a user, there was a comment box when I clicked run query, and you can add comments. So now if I go back to the list of requests, I can say create file, and it processes it, and maybe it'll create it. Claims it created it. It was request ID 10. Then there's an institutional specific approach. Everyone is going to manage getting the files to the user slightly differently, but the files exist somewhere that the server can access. So it goes on a directory or a mount point or share on the server, the ITB2 server, and then can transfer those to the user in some way. So you can see we have this hidden backdoor just because this is all demo data, where you can look at the data exports. We have a bunch of different exports. This was query request 10, and you can see we've got asthma table 1C. There's also the definition for the asthma table. This is the definition. So if you're familiar with ITB2 data structures, it's very similar to ontology data structures. If you're not, this might be a file that's more useful for people to bring to their system administrators if they're debugging. But you can see from this that it has, these are all the columns that were defined in the table. And there was aggregation value. There is, aggregation type. You can see we had minimum date, average value, number of concepts, etc. And so that lets you see what was defined in the table, and then we get our actual data table, which has all of the data that was requested. So I will stop sharing. How do I stop sharing? But anyway, we're hoping that people are using this or are going to use it soon. We'll be officially rolling it out to Enact in the early new year. I'd like to get some feedback. Sorry, Diane, I can't find the share stop button. Oh, there it is.
You find it? Okay.
Yeah, I got it.
Very nice.
Okay, this is great. This is great. Super excited about this release, and the new website and 4.4. So a lot of hard work over the past year or so, and more to come. So, does anybody have any last minute questions? Again, I definitely want people to chime in and talk to me about what they want for the symposium next June, and if they're willing to present use cases. I know Anupama went out and probably talked to a half a dozen users about how they're using Shrine in I2B2, and she came back with some pretty great use cases, things that I did not think were typical. So I know people are using it for interesting things, and we'd love to hear about them, and highlight them on the new website too. So, any other questions or comments?
Jeff, Diane, Steve Diamond, that website niche is great for everyone else who got involved in it. Just a thought on the stats, the factoids that were, when we scroll down and everything. Let's give some consideration, Nisha. We can talk about it, but that might be something to have in the ticker tray to get that first timer just click through to CI2B2 and give us instant credentials. So if anyone who's on the call has more factoids or stats or thoughts about that, it would be great to capture them. It's just one of the things I wanted to kind of weigh in on.
Yeah,
Very good.
yeah, that sounds great, Dave.
Thanks, Steve.
Tom, you got your hand up.
Hi, Diane. Hi, Jeff. Thank you for a super helpful meeting. Just great work all around. Um, uh, uh, we're a couple versions behind of where we need to be in I2B2 versions. And Jeff, towards the end of your remarks, you indicated that the software will be released in January. I'm just trying to figure out, should we use what's currently available or should we wait? And perhaps that's a valuable thing for all sorts of sites looking to upgrade. What do you think?
Oh, maybe I misspoke. No, the ITB2, the software is all finished and has been released since September 30th. The only logistically, we're going to help Enact sites get all upgraded for those that want our help, maybe early January. But
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I missed that part about the Unix sites. Thank you.
yeah, sure.
And just a note, there are a number of folks even on this call that are working as contractors. So if you need some some help in getting the implementation done, and you really want to bring in a contractor that knows what they're doing, anybody that shows up on our website are people who really have been working in the community and know what they're doing. So if you need a little bit of a hand, you can grab that information on the website.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other last minute comments? All right. All right, everyone. Well, don't be shy. Oh, Andrea, please.
Hi, sorry, I put a couple in the chat. I don't know if you guys had seen them, but with some of the values that were demoed for some of the lab results, I'm a lab professional. I'm not aware of any global instruments that produce things up to those decimal points in from a scientific notation perspective. So I'm just curious, do you have a way that boundaries are associated with the different healthcare data so that things are not reported in either beyond the boundaries of what are compatible with life, whether it's like medications, temperatures, lab results, weight, height, vitals, any types of numeric data. And then, so that's one of my questions. And then one of the other questions is related to the qualitative. You had the min max, which is and really nice to see from the demo. But is that applied across the board to like qualitative, which wouldn't work if you have things that are reported positive, negative, or are there different types of criteria that you use for the data?
Yeah, so the additional sig figs that you don't really want, the zeros at the end. Yeah, that's an artifact of the database exporter, and I think that's a good note. That can be an enhancement for the next version. I instantly think that maybe it's Oracle or Postgres. One of them doesn't do that, just because of default database parameters. But yeah, we can look into doing that for the next release. And I do believe that it does correctly know whether something is a quantitative or qualitative value.
Okay, that's helpful. No, it's really nice to have those features. It's just understanding. And I've seen other healthcare data systems where they've kind of default the units or whatever the case might be to the different decimal points, and they apply it across the board to all data. So even things like weight or temperature where might go out,
Yeah.
multiple decimal points and things, and it can be confusing, especially if it's used for calculation statistics too. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, I guess we're at time. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye.